Roman shields, the kind the writer of this letter wanted you to picture when thinking of this armor of God, they weren't dinky round things that you see in the gladiator movies. No, the shields of the Roman soldiers were big rectangles that had a slight curve to them, designed to give protection in the front as well as on the sides. The shields were not cast from metal, but crafted from stretched leather, which was then doused down with water before battle, a better defense against flaming arrows, which were a common battlefield weapon of the day. And picture this. Roman legions would march in a testudo formation. Testudo is the Latin word for tortoise. Imagine soldiers lined up in tight formation, holding these large shields with the curved design in front of them and above them. So the shields link together to look like a giant tortoise shell. Yes, this is the power of the shield of faith. When we imagine it as the original audience of this letter would have, we ought not imagine the lone soldier, shield in hand, sword-clad armed raised, screaming his war cry and rushing into battle all alone. No. When we imagine the shield of faith, we ought to imagine the testudo formation, this tortoise going into battle. The shield of faith, it's used together to protect yourself and to protect the people next to you. So the question is, who are you shielding with your shield of faith? That's the question before us this morning. So as we prepare for the word preached, would you join with me your hearts and minds in prayer? Oh God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of each of our hearts be found acceptable in your sight, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. My friend Angie, who some of you know, she preached my installation service here. Well, she tells the story about the time she went to Israel, Palestine, to walk with Palestinian farmers, accompanying them to their olive groves, to be a human shield. She says it like this. See, one of the things about the wall going up in Israel, the wall separating the West Bank from Israel, is that there's a buffer zone between the land of Israel and the land of Palestine. And the walls that create this buffer zone, well, they're built further into Palestine than they are into Israel. Further in from where the wall actually is. So farmland is trapped inside this buffer zone. Palestinian farmland is trapped in this buffer zone. People who have farmed that land for generations are now cut off from their land. Even though they own this land and their families have farmed it for centuries, they can't get to it without going through a checkpoint. Often, for many, many reasons, people are stopped. They are delayed, and sometimes they are not even granted access to their very own farmland. It is so hard for these farmers to get to their olive groves, the olive groves which provide livelihood for their families. And this is what's important. There's an exceedingly short window of time to harvest their olives. Time matters. Delays matter. But when people from the outside world accompany them, they are far more likely to get through, far more likely not to be delayed at the checkpoint, and far more likely to gain easy access to their olive groves for harvest. So that's what Angie and her friends did. They went to Palestine and shielded farmers from the tyranny of the checkpoints, accompanied them on to their sacred land, then shielded them safely through the checkpoints back home again. I remember when Angie was preparing to go on this trip. She had to sign all of this paperwork, these release forms that warned her of the imminent danger that she would be in. She called me late one night, just days before she was to board her plane, and said, "I could die doing this." "Well then," I said, "we ought to plan your funeral before you go." You laugh, but I'm practical like that. If you're called to go and do something where you may die, we ought to get some thoughts down on paper before you get on the plane. So I sat there and took down notes on a UPS envelope. It was the only thing I could grab. She wanted us to sing "O Sacred Head Now Wounded," and she wanted me to tell the people, to tell her family, that she died living out her faith. Take up the shield of faith, Ephesians says, with which you can extinguish the flames of the evil one. But Angie didn't die. No, it was all far less dramatic than that. And she sort of laughs about it when she talks now. She laughs about how not scary it was. She says, "It wasn't even like it was a scary thing to do," she said. "We thought we would feel risk, but we didn't. Because our presence, just our presence alone, allowed for these people to get to their land." Sometimes, and this is the important thing about using the shield of faith, sometimes just putting up the shield of faith prevents the flaming arrows from flying in the first place. Why? Because your presence provides a level of accountability for the other's actions. Just your presence provides a level of accountability for others' actions. When you use your shield of faith, your presence provides a level of accountability for other people's actions. How amazing is that? When these farmers don't have international help, they can be bullied and cut off from their land. So for the people who live there, who are cut off from their livelihood, it is frightening. It is dangerous. It's terrifying. But strangely, Angie says, to be the shield didn't even feel dangerous. But of course there's risk. Of course there is risk to using your body, yourself, as a shield. There's this image I saw once in, I don't know, Life or Time magazine, I can't remember which. It was a photograph taken at a white supremacist rally. Violence had broken out between the people at the rally and people in a counter-protest. In this photo, there was a large white man clad in a Confederate flag t-shirt, lying on the ground. His head is bloody, his arms are back. He's been struck and struck hard. And in the corner of the photograph, you can see people advancing towards him. He's going to be attacked again, beaten again, bloodied again. there's this woman standing in the way. There is this woman, her arms are outstretched, shielding the man from his attack.